This episode of the AVB Podcast, we are back here in Ottawa, Ontario, and we're hanging out with Miss Erin Benjamin from, I'm going to mess it up because you just changed it recently, but it's Canada Live Music Association now.
The Canadian Live
Music Association.
It's okay.
Well, because it was Canada Live Music before, right?
Music Canada. It's okay. This is why we changed it, because it was very confusing. So
thank you for hanging out with us.
Total pleasure.
I have so many questions about your association. I'm actually fascinated by it. I only found out about it in sort of my researching coming up here and had no idea it existed, and I'm so excited to find out about it.
Awesome.
Before we get to that, though, I'm going to start with you the same way we start with everyone. I want to know about the house you grew up in. I want to know about mom and dad, brothers and sisters, all of that stuff.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I grew up in Toronto.
Okay.
In a neighborhood not too far from downtown, and I have 3 other siblings. I have an older brother and a twin sister. We're fraternal.
Okay.
And a little sister. My twin sister lives on Manitoulin Island and now runs her own craft brewing company, which is awesome. It's called Split Rail Brewing Company. You can't get it unless you're north of Parry Sound, but hopefully coming to a bar near you soon one day. They're growing every summer. It's huge.
That's awesome.
Really great. And my brother sort of spends his time between Manitoulin Island and Toronto, and he has 2 beautiful kids, my niece and nephew. And then my little sister, a long-time New Yorker, now living in Montreal, and she is a corporate sustainability consultant and works around the world helping companies be better citizens of the planet.
So it's a bunch of kids that grew up and did nothing with their lives.
Well, we were all very late to the game. We were all 2 of my siblings spent a long time in university. I did not. I just went, got my degree, and finished, got the hell out. But my twin sister and I think my brother, definitely my sister Andy, spent a long time in university. Sorry.
Wait, so you say spend a long time in university. There's 2 ways that story can unfold.
Yeah. She went to Trent, then she went to Queens, and then she spent some time at St. Lawrence College, and anyway, she's trained. She did her master's actually in Ottawa at Carleton in social work, and worked in social work for a long time until she decided to open her own business.
Tell me about mom and dad.
So my mom lives in Toronto. My dad lives just outside of Toronto. My dad was a senior public servant in the provincial government for his career. He's a deputy minister of some different portfolios. And my mom originally was a nurse and took a few years off to have 4 children under the age of 5 by the time she was 26. The old days, huh?
Yeah.
And I had 2 under the age of 5 by the time I was 40, so I was all totally different. And then she went on to do many other things, including work. She ran a medical office, and then my parents at the time in the early 90s relocated to Sudbury, Ontario, where I spent many years as well. And my mom ultimately was running the administrative side of the new medical school there until she retired a few years ago.
So you grew up in an administrative house.
You know what? I don't think I've ever thought of it that way, but I grew up in a house with parents who were, multitaskers, extremely efficient with time management, and were planners. Mm-hmm. And so 3 of us, I'll let you figure out which 3, but 3 of us are really sort of hyper A-type. Mm-hmm. And all 4 of us really have. My brother runs his own business as well, and he designs custom databases.
Okay.
So, he has a head for that kind of thing. I do not. I guess all of us are just weirdly, 3 of us have organized and continue to organize major events and things like that. So that kind of brain, I guess.
Was it a family that spent a lot of time together?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Up until we all started to peel off to university.
Sure.
We were, I don't think my mom came with us on Sundays, but we would go skiing often, and we all played. Oh, my little sister didn't play hockey, but 3 of us played hockey, so a lot of hockey going on. We all went to the same summer camp. Not my dad, but my mom was the camp nurse at a camp called Pinecrest in Muskoka, where my kids go now.
Oh, cool.
And we spent a lot of time doing that, and. We all had our own things, though, for sure.
Where did music come into your life?
So, this is, when I was 5 years old, I tell the story sometimes because I like to remind myself that I used to be an artist, but when I was 5 years old, I had a dream that I was a guitar player. And so I went to my mom, literally 5 years old, and I was like, I need a guitar. And my mom was like, yes, dear, whatever. Talk to the hand, basically. And so I bugged her for I don't know, weeks, months, I don't know how long it was, until she finally, I wore her down and she took me to Drum World on Bayview Avenue. I don't think it's still there. I don't know if it's still there. Because it was not far from where we lived, and just like Bayview and Eglinton area. And she bought me a $100 Dugout guitar, and that was my guitar for almost 20 years. I instantly started to teach myself how to play guitar. I took lessons from a neighbor, a lovely neighbor, who, the first song I ever learned was Feeling Groovy. I did like Four Strong Winds and a whole bunch of Bob Dylan tunes. But that really, I didn't stop from that point on. So I started writing songs and performing like from a really young age.
Because you said you were 5 and you had a dream that you needed a guitar, right? So like there's not a whole lot of, like we're not laying down a big logical line of like why we get into music at this point. But like, did you have musical influences around you? Were mom and dad musical?
My aunt, way back in the day when I was little, used to work for, I think it was CBS Records, and she was like a rep, and she had a trunk full of vinyl, and she would go from record store to record store selling the latest albums. And I remember this because I had a big Kiss mirror. She used to get all the coolest swag, and I had this cool...
I had a Bowie mirror.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So the Kiss mirror was like the size of the wall behind us with each of the guys in the corner and the Kiss and the logo in the middle, and I loved that mirror. Oh my God, I wish I never got rid of it. But so I think we probably had more vinyl in our house than people who weren't super connected to music, but we listened to music regularly. My parents had a great stereo, and I have the receiver and the speakers to this day.
Oh, wow.
Oh my, it's vintage, it's great. But I don't remember like my parents sitting us down and saying, "Oh, you got to listen to this," which is what I do with my kids right now. Oh, you got to listen to this, and now they're doing it to me. So I don't know. It was just in me. Like it was in me. It was just there. I should say that my grandfather, who passed away before I was born, I never met him. Was a clarinet player and lived in Toronto. My mom grew up living above Cafe Diplomatico on College Street in Toronto. Okay. And her father, my grandfather, sold insurance by day and played clarinet in big bands by night. And so maybe that's where it came from.
It's interesting. I love, especially because you get into business, so it's not this stereotypical side of it. But I always wonder with musicians who grow up in a house that don't, because that's the house I grew up in. My parents were not musical whatsoever, right? I wanted to be a drummer when I was a young kid, and they got conned into putting a guitar in my hand. So that lasted 6 weeks and I was done. Yeah. And it took me years to ever find music. So it's really interesting to me that you wanted music that early on and were able to sort of grab onto it.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. And there have been a few moments like that in my life that were sure things that I just knew. There was no second guessing.
Like what else?
My relationship with the summer camp that my kids go to, Pinecrest, like it was just a place I needed to be. I needed to return to and stay at. Sometimes different jobs I've had in my life, I've just known that I need to have that job. I really, just really, really like strangely sure.
You're hyper goal oriented, right?
I don't know if it's goal. I'm not, I wouldn't say I'm goal oriented. I would say that there's like 1,000 things happening in my brain at once, all the time. And I can see pathways really clearly, and I just what I would like to achieve every day is like one step down that path every day. And when I was an artist, a full-time artist years ago, I ran my own record company, and I was just I had no idea what I was doing, but I could see the path, So maybe what was at the end of that path as an artist? Well, was it make enough money to pay my bills? Was it fame and whatever? Was it being able to share my music with my fans? It was probably all parts of that. I don't know. Like I don't wake up in the morning and say, this organization that I'm so lucky enough to work for now, we know where we want to be in 2, 5, 10 years for sure. But for me, it's always about like bite-sized chunks.
Right.
Yeah.
Talk to me. I want to come back to that. I need to get a little more information first. Tell me about your music career.
Well, it really began. Like I said, I was writing songs from the time I was a kid. So when I graduated from university, though, years ago, 1991, I know, I moved to Sudbury because that's where my parents had relocated because of my dad's job. And we knew Sudbury. My dad was born in Sudbury. We have a family cottage on Manitoulin where my sister lives and has a brewery. That's our connection to the north. So I had come back from school, and my plan was to move to Toronto, actually, as quickly as possible. I had just graduated from the theater department at Concordia, and I was just so determined to be an actor. And I ended up.
Oh, acting was the thing.
Well, okay. Yeah. I acted all through high school and in public school and in kindergarten. My acting.
Kind of acting, film, television, or theater.
Theater.
Okay.
Yeah. So my plan was to just get a job, make a bunch of cash bartending or whatever in Sudbury, and then find a place in Toronto.
All right, you just explained a whole bunch to me. All right, bartender. Okay.
Yeah. I was a career bartender for a while.
All right.
But that was the best job ever. Mm-hmm. Super social, great way to meet people. And I made a lot of money, or enough money, more money than I'd made at that point in my life, that's for sure. Anyways, in Sudbury, I found myself writing more songs, and then I would, your peeps at the bar, whatever, you play guitar, let's play, and people would hear my songs and oh, that's really good. So I started to play more and more and more, write more and more songs, and then I just went out and got some gigs and met amazing musicians in Sudbury, which is a city that I love, and just really my career just began very organically. Yeah. Then I recorded like a kind of like an EP on a cassette with my cousin, who's a musician in Toronto. Anyway, that's a long story, but that led to more shows. And it was the early 90s. I mean, there's a couple of musicians, like female musicians around, not very many, and so.
But it was also kind of like the birth of that being an important thing, though, too. Female musicians being a focus of what the conversation and entertainment was in the mid-90s.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, my, Lilith Fair, whatever. I mean, I'm a huge fan of everyone from Katie Lang, Sarah McLachlan, Holly Cole, not to mention all like Joni Mitchell and all the rest, like earlier, but for sure. And I actually later in my career got to play some really cool shows with some great artists who I'd always loved and admired. But in Sudbury in those days, there, I just got a lot of opportunity because I worked really hard. Mm-hmm. And I was running I created this label called Baby Hugh Productions, but basically was sort of manufacturing, distributing, and marketing, promoting my own music. So, but it was like, I don't know, I just followed my instincts.
Where did the concept for that come in?
I think that I felt that I needed to, for some reason, have something that looked bigger than just me around me.
But why build it yourself rather than just try to attach yourself to something that already exists?
Oh, I don't think would not have even known how to find a label or, I was going to things like Canadian Music Week, and I was involved from an early stage with the Songwriters Association of Canada. I was slowly plugging myself into the actual music industry. But I lived in Sudbury, and I didn't know what I was doing at all. So I'm like, I should just, have my own label. And what do I think a label should do? I don't know. I guess people should hear my music. How are they going to hear my music? Well, I need to record it, and then I need to send it. Then I'll talk to people I'll talk to the people who do play it, or I'll try and get more people to play it.
You just said the thing that separates you from the majority of people who start a music quote unquote career. You got to I'm going to record an album, and then you still had shit to do.
Well, and so, yeah, it's funny. I actually had a lovely conversation with a young artist this morning, and I spend a lot of time talking to young artists, which is one of my favorite things to do because they definitely learn things the hard way. Like, what? It's a great question. Like, why would you start your own label? There's there's lots of labels, and frankly, if you're good, one of those labels is going to want to work with you, right? But I didn't know that, and I really liked. Which is no surprise if you know me now. I like being in charge of everything. I like making sure everything was done exactly as it needed to be done, on time, in a particular way. And I created my own website in 1994. I coded it. I had some help from some great friends who knew more than me, but I figured out how to record and upload an MP3 in 1993, 94. Took 2 days, by the way. Yep. And that sort of thing really empowered me. I was like, oh my God, I got this. And I was booking I wasn't paying anybody else except my musicians. All the money was coming to me. And then at a certain point, I worked with an agent and a manager to advance my career. I mean, those were early days, but really exciting. And it was great I was really proud of that. I still am.
It's a lot of hustle for a kid. And I mean, you're what, early 20s or whatever. You're still a kid.
Yeah, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Especially, it's fascinating to me that you sort of like grab. There's a couple of those people. You know what I mean? Everyone, like I remember back in the day when, you know, my high school years, whatever, there was a couple of kids that would sort of like grab onto it and like take off with it. And then a lot of it just seemed to sort of fade afterwards. Why do you think you were able to stick with it? Like you've changed, you've progressed.
Yeah. Great question. So for me, and there's a lot of people like me in the music industry. I've said this many times. I feel like my career as an artist and as a performing artist and recording artist prepared me for what I do now. And people who, not everyone knows that I was an artist, but people who remembered me as such say, don't you miss performing? And I perform all the time. Look, I get to do interviews like this. It's fantastic, right? Like I love being on stage. I love communicating a message to an audience, whether it's 1 or 10,000. And I always have something to say, whether it's worth listening to or not. I don't know. You be the judge.
I know that problem.
but I really feel that my career, my 10 years as a touring singer-songwriter prepared me to do what I do now well. And I'll always be grateful for that. And all of the people and fans and friends, and especially family who helped me along the way. Because you couldn't have told me this when I was like 28 and making what was going to be my last record called Monster in My Heart. We released in 1998. I think I was about 28 years old.
What did you tour under? Like, was it a band name?
Erin Benjamin. Okay. Yeah. Yes. So there's like two.
So I'm going digging. Don't worry. If there are links to be found, they are below.
Yeah, there are two. There's some music that exists online that and I do have a few copies of the record at home, which I could send you, and some T-shirts, which are vintage now and holding up remarkably well in their boxes, I must say. But yeah, it was really. I had a bass player who was my producer and my life partner for several years. Great guy, an incredible musician named Dick Van Ranshoven, who is, I believe, still lives in Sudbury. I haven't seen him for a long time, but he was just amazing. And he produced Monster in My Heart, and we toured together a lot. He was a great acoustic bass player, an electric bass player, and cello player, and just a really funny guy. So great sideman. And then if it was a bigger show, I'd have a band kind of thing. Okay. Yeah.
When you were going through all of that experience, like as touring, because you said you couldn't have told you that you were going to be done with the music part of it, but did you, like, was there a plan B for you?
No.
There wasn't even a plan A.
No, there still isn't a plan B.
There wasn't a plan A, was there?
No, I mean, the plan was to just do, it's really interesting because I've learned so much as I've gotten older. Like I mean, I just never stopped to think. Mm-hmm. What if I can't pay my rent? What if I can't get a gig? What if I make a record and no one likes it? Like it just didn't. I was that confident, there's another word, cocky. Like you couldn't have told me you could not have told me anything. And I'm sure people tried along the way to give me advice, and I just blasted through because I was just that kid. I was so sure. And then when I started getting involved with an organization which is now called Folk Music Ontario. It used to be called the Ontario Council of Folk Festivals. They had two winners they have a songwriting contest called Songs from the Heart. It was 1996. And the prize was you got to come and showcase for all these artistic directors at this very small annual conference that they had in Orillia at the Sundial, which I knew because we'd drive past it on the way to the cottage every summer on the 400. And so I went to this conference, and by myself, actually. I didn't have Dick with me to play, and I remember being terrified and getting there thinking, what have I done? Like, this is crazy. I don't know anybody, blah, blah, blah. It was just, so I played, and I played okay. I don't think my showcase was that mind-blowing. But what I did was I started talking to people and getting to know over the course of 3 days at this conference some of these amazing people who were all booking festivals. Mm-hmm. And I ended up getting to play some of those festivals and meeting more people, and then really starting to understand how the industry worked and building those relationships. And I haven't looked back. I mean,
how long did it take you to learn that there's only 6 people in the Canadian music industry?
Well, there's a few more than that, but it's really true. And I mean, my personal philosophy, and every single time I talk to an artist or someone who asks me for advice, which is an experience I really love and appreciate, is that it is all about relationships in this industry. It is all about who you know. And the most important thing you can do is show up and participate. So we can all play shows. We all have played shows to 10 people, and half of them are like our mom.
10 people, yeah. Sweet. We got to sell out.
But they know what it's like, right? So, yeah. but you have to work equally hard to be successful in this business at building relationships as well. And I don't care if you're a pop star, if you're Drake, or you're emerging artist coming out of small town Ontario. Like, you have to get out there and shake hands and meet people. And even if you're an introvert, and I know, not like, take my twin sister, for example, very introverted. She got all the introverted genes. I got all the extroverted genes. I know it's hard to put yourself out there, but this industry is, it really is who you know, and it takes time to build those relationships. But once we decide we like each other, we might work together, right? Or we won't forget, oh yeah, I met AJ, he's a great guy. Yeah. And maybe, Erin, do you know that artist? I'd love to interview them, but I don't know them. Could you? Now we know we've established this connection, right? That connection is what life is all about. And it's what success in any career or any industry looks like.
Yeah, it's because it's funny because with the Canadian, I'm obviously joking with the 6 people, but obviously it doesn't take you much time sort of exploring, and you just realize everyone knows everyone.
Yeah.
And there are only so many people doing so many things, but that's actually a benefit. It means there's really room for anyone else that wants to come up. You just got to show up to the gig.
I completely agree. And a lot of those people, this is the other thing about like being pro right out of the gate, just like always being a good person, being nice, being professional, because a lot of those people
being professional, fine. Being nice is a tougher lesson to learn for some of us.
Well, I understand that, but I can say from experience that many people that I work with today, I was working with 30 years ago.
Right.
So we were all coming up in whatever roles we were playing. But those people, like Tom Kemp, an agent at Feldman, who just bought the company with Jeff Crabe, he was the junior agent when I was working with Richard Mills, who was my agent at the time when I was an artist. And now he owns the company. Like, that is something that should not be lost on anyone. And I really think that my personal philosophy is just lead with your heart as often as you can. Be a good person, pay it forward, be kind, respectful, listen, learn from other people, and good things happen. Anything can happen. Mm-hmm. I could get fired tomorrow, so I don't know. Hopefully that doesn't happen, but if I do, then I know that I've got a lot of really solid relationships to lean on, and that, I think, is what propelled me. I kind of strayed from the question, but kind of propelled me into this other space. So this conference, to the showcase, I meet all these amazing people. I eventually joined the board of directors of that organization because I'm always the squeaky wheel in terms of, what I think people should be doing with their resources. And that has led me, might have irritated some people along the way, but certainly led me to great opportunities in terms of leadership onto different boards of directors, where like the Songwriters Association of Canada or Folk Alliance International or the East Coast Music Association or whatever it's been, or the Ottawa Blues Festival. And I get to sort of maybe take ownership of some of the things I feel really passionate about, and using these relationships and organizations as a mechanism to help forge change is really what I'm trying to express now. And that has led me to all these other opportunities.
Sorry, this is kind of a side topic, but I'm just kind of walking through this entire path in my head with you. And I wonder, you said right through from the very beginning, you've always been this extroverted person, mm-hmm. right? How long did it take you, and was it at all? Did you struggle with that at all? Because you almost, like, as you're talking about it, you almost, and I don't know if it's just like a method of the way you talk or whatever, but you almost kind of like, when it comes up, you kind of like apologize for it. Oh. Now, is that just a way you've managed to cope with it, or do you actually kind of, do you sit behind it a little?
That's a girl thing. Never really take, own your success or whatever. Like, I just don't want to, I am very sensitive to, like, overconfident people can be annoying. So I'm just trying to find a balance.
Right. So, but it wasn't a struggle for you. Like it was something you were okay with.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that again, if I could do it all over again, I think a little more listening and like less talking, more listening would have really benefited the young Erin Benjamin, because I made a lot of decisions quickly without doing my homework and having the patience to really process and think things through, which I still struggle with. Every report card that ever came home said Erin rushes. And seriously, I'm sure if my board of directors were going to write me a review, it would say, slow down. And there's good things and bad things that come with the kind of the speed at which I work. But yeah, I think that my confidence has blinded me and my ability to have a conversation with anybody at times, but it's also created great opportunities. Someone gave me great advice once, and that was when you're in a room full of people you don't know, look for the most interesting person in the room and then go and have a conversation with them.
How do you know they're the most interesting person in the room?
To you. Like the most interesting looking person or whatever. Just like find someone who you think looks interesting and introduce yourself.
It's not a bad idea.
Yeah.
It's a great way to start, especially when you walk into a room and don't know what to do.
It works.
Yeah.
It works. And it's led to a lot of interesting things too. But there are, sure, there are times when I've been shy or completely, insecure. I still am lots of times, but I think when I was younger, and also I had these 4 siblings. We're all very different, and the 3 of them are way smarter than I am. And I kind of was always like part jock and part musician, and I fit in different spots, but I didn't fit fully into one or the other.
Fit in everywhere and nowhere at the same time.
Yeah. And so by the time I got to university, I don't know. I think sometimes confidence is a mask, right? Like, so when you're feeling super insecure and you're a really outgoing person, like sometimes you just, you raise the faders on the confidence so that you're protecting yourself, right? But now looking back, I mean, I'm turning 50 in 2 weeks. And I'm just saying that now because I'm really totally comfortable turning 50. Thank you. I really no longer care.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a neat
feeling, eh?
It's great. It's the freedom that comes with just being truly relaxed and comfortable in my own skin. Couple little sort of things can get easily knotted back up and you just have to work it out. But so it's always a challenge for me to just feel super grounded and calm and open and whatever. But I think now I'm well.
No. This is what we talk about on the show anyway. I think my audience is much more interested in this side of the conversation than the nitty gritty detail stuff, because I think this is, and we do this with a lot of our guests, right? I think at the end of the day, the people who are going to watch this stuff, sure, they're interested in business and they want to get information that way, but mostly they're just trying to be an artist. They're just trying to figure out who the hell they are. Yeah. And I know for me, I had nothing to bounce it off of, right? Yeah. So that's why I have conversations like this with somebody like you, to tell those people, like, no, if you're in this spot, if this is how you're sort of feeling, don't worry, you'll be all right, kind of thing.
Yeah, no, totally. And I think for artists who are watching, and by the way, I'd be happy to have a conversation anytime about the specifics of how to manage this, but it really is about just putting yourself out there and definitely playing shows and showing up and getting involved and making connections that way, because this, back to the 6 people in the industry thing, if you break it down, it's a very small community, the Canadian music industry. And so just knowing, like, it's who you know. And so if I don't know anybody, what do? You gotta get out there and know people.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's got its good and its bad being the size it is. It's bad because it's, there isn't a lot of access to a lot of stuff, but it's also good because once you sort of figure out, oh, this is all you kind of need, it's not tough to know everybody all of a sudden.
No, it isn't. And where you have to keep in mind, what you have to keep in mind is that, like, one wrong move, and you could do serious damage. I've seen artists and industry alike, be a dick to the wrong person, and it's like game over. I mean, people talk. And so I can't emphasize enough the importance of being a decent human being in the music industry. And there are a bunch of us now working on things. We have a program called Raising the Bar at the Canadian Live Music Association about safer spaces, harm reduction, and event safety. But people are really, just to contextualize, people are really paying attention to the essence of the music industry and trying to fix some of the, not just mythology, but the legendary behavior of the music industry as a whole. Mm-hmm. Those days are over. And in my opinion, and not speaking just solely as a woman, but as a professional in the music industry, like this could and should be an incredible industry to work in. And there's lots of room for really decent, amazing people. Of course, most people working in the industry are decent and amazing, but it has a reputation where people think it's okay to be an asshole. It isn't.
Yeah, I think, and I think that's holdover from like the 80s US factor, like the popularity of that, because like, honestly, I don't know, just paying attention to entertainment in general, that's been the story for at least the last 25 years, is quit being an asshole. Yeah. And I don't know, do you run into, like, do you see it often?
There are lots of personalities in the music industry. Yeah, I see it more often than I wish I did. But those are people who I think, they tend to be people who've been in the industry for a long time and feel that a certain approach to leadership is somehow okay. I try not to spend much time with those people. Mm-hmm. In the leadership in my world, and the people that I deeply respect are, they're kind first. There's a lot of kindness and a lot of kind people, and I think that's just essential. So I don't think it'll be long before, as things turn over with a lot of industries, music industries, not unique in this way. But anybody who thinks that, any attitude is okay because that's how it works in the music industry, not the case. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you, maybe even not using names if it's possible, do you have a horror story that do you got one that you can talk about that you watch somebody really fuck it up? I know they're tough, right?
Yeah, I don't know that I have a specific story that I can share.
I see all of the stories nope, can't do that one. Yeah, no, I get it. Yeah, I get it. It's just if there was one, so that those can be interesting ones. Talk to me specifically about let's see if we get it right this time. Canada Live Music Association.
Nope.
Canadian Live Music Association. Yes. All right. In your defense, I'm terrible with names in general, so.
It's all right. Here's my card. Just keep it in front of you.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So we got it. So talk to me about, how did this get started? How did you get involved with it? All of that.
Okay. So I need to tell this story. I need to go back to the Ontario Council of Folk Festivals.
Okay.
So remembering that I was an artist in 1996, I joined the board. At that time, the organization was really small. There was about 75 members, and they had this little conference. It was great, wonderful people, really sort of the folk festival community in Ontario. And then when I was on the board, they at the time they'd been paying a wonderful person named Judy Wilson, a couple of hours a week to do some of the association's paperwork or whatever, and she got very sick and unfortunately passed away eventually. But the board needed someone like a warm body to actually sort of take over the administrata of the association. It wasn't a lot of stuff. They produced this annual conference. They did this, and I believe still do a brochure of a calendar of festivals. And because I was at this point, I was also running another record label in Northern Ontario, and I was involved in the startup of something called MFM, Music and Film in Motion, which is the Film and Music Industry Association in Northern Ontario. And so I was involved in that. I'm running these two labels. I'm managing my own career. Probably at this point, I'm working with a bigger team and getting ready to release Monster in My Heart in 98, so writing songs for that. The board chair and the vice chair took me out. It's Benjamin, we need to talk to you. Take me out into the hallway. This meeting was at the Toronto Blues Society office in this great loft just next to Fraternity Bellwoods Park in Toronto on Queen Street. And so they take me out into the hallway and they're like, okay, so Judy's sick. We need someone to do this. We have $5,000 in the bank and that's it. But there's probably more money. Like if you're interested, you could probably apply for more grants or whatever. And so I'm remembering I'm a full-time artist at this point. So I'm sitting there with like the best poker face I could manage, and I'm thinking, all I can think of is $5,000. So without even, and I hope that Warren Robinson and Derek Andrews would tell the story the same way. I hope they would. But my memory is that without missing a beat, I said, okay, I'll do it. But you have to call me the executive director. Take it or leave it. They took it. And I left that organization 8 years later with 1,500 members and a $500,000 budget. And again, I didn't go to how to build an association school.
Right.
And I made a lot of mistakes. Oh my God, so many mistakes. And I loved my OCFF family. At the end of that, I was actually recruited to come and work for something called the Canadian Arts Presenting Association, called CAPACOA. And it is the National Performing Arts Organization, working with multidisciplinary presenters and festivals. So concert halls, nonprofit, municipal theaters, that sort of thing. And I did that for 7 years, and that was a really powerful experience. And during, 4.5 years ago, I caught wind that some of my music industry colleagues were talking about creating another association. So I got on the phone and I phoned them all, and I'm like, what do you think you're doing? We're the association. CAPACOA represents these people. And if they're not members, they could be, and talk to me about how we can, this country does not need another association. And I was feeling very territorial because I came from the music industry originally, and I had always tried to bring them all closer. And I was really trying to get CAPACOA to be recognized as this beyond its immediate constituency. It was very, I took over from the founder who had been there for 22 years. So there's a lot of regrowth. It was an amazing organization and great members, but I was really trying to broaden that conversation. There were no festivals actually in the beginning who were members, and we really did great work there. But my colleagues in the music industry, one of them in particular, is like, get a grip, Benjamin. You do not now, nor will you ever represent us. So I was like, fine. So they posted the job a couple months later for an executive director position of this thing called Music Canada Live. And the job posting, I probably still have a copy of it somewhere. And I'm quite sure they didn't, but I read it like it was written for me.
For you.
Yeah. And I just went, I have to do this. I have to throw my hat into the ring. And they wanted someone in Toronto. I've got 2 kids here. I wasn't going to move back to Toronto. Toronto's my home, but I haven't lived there for a long time. That wasn't going to be a possibility. So they interviewed me, and they said, well, how would you resolve the Toronto thing? And I'm like, I would come to Toronto on a regular basis, and it'll be fine. But this keeps me close to Ottawa. Anyway, we had great conversations. It was a very long process, and they eventually hired me, and I had to say goodbye to CAPACOA and started this job in November 2014, and I haven't looked back since. It's thrilling.
So tell me what the job is.
So the organization's mandate is to entrench the economic, social, and cultural value of live music in the minds of both public and private sector. So that
was awesome. Right out of brochure, page 2. Now say it in English.
I've only said our job. So I say that at the Canadian Live Music Association, we have an internal conversation, an external conversation. Okay. Externally, we want people to know why live music matters. We want people to understand what live music contributes to the economy of a city like Ottawa. Mm-hmm. What it means for local businesses who benefit from a show at the National Arts Centre, or when Blues Fest is up, or what have you. We want people to understand how live music impacts our quality of life, how we feel when we see shows, what the social implications are, and to recognize all of the work that have gone into the countless studies that demonstrate that live music makes us healthier and smarter, exposure and exposure to and participation in, and how live music defines us as a country, how we're able to grow careers of our artists who then go around the world and talk about the amazing country that is Canada, or our emerging artists, or our artists who never leave their home market but play that same club every Saturday night and change people's lives because they're playing cover songs that make them want to dance. Mm-hmm. I mean, this town is great for that. So for all of those things. So we want to have that conversation, and also we want government to understand how policy at municipal, provincial, and federal policy not just cultural policy, but economic policy, can reflect and support and help grow the live music industry. I always say to governments, let us help you leverage the value of your local music economy, because there's so much that people don't understand about live music, because live music has never been organized before. Every other subsector of the music industry has a trade association, and they've had those associations in some cases for decades. Mm-hmm. They're very good at telling their story. So the internal part of this, and the hardest and best part of my job, is organizing the Canadian live music industry, bringing them on board as members and having these conversations as a community about what matters to us. And in doing so, enabling all of us to tell to get our story straight, and then the external part is actually going out and telling that story. And it is amazing, because live music changes lives, and there's that side, and then there's the other side where the artists don't make enough money. That's a fact. But those who do, for many of them, the vast majority of their earned revenue is coming from live music. So the capacity of the live music industry, the people behind live music, the people who put artists on stages in every city and town in this country, those people need to be recognized and valued for what they do. And that is my job, is to be able to help people understand the way the music industry actually works today. This is not the music industry of the 1990s. This is a statistic that I've been sharing lately that I love. Live music by 2021 is projected to represent 62% of the music market in Canada. So the music market revenues, 62% of the music industry, if you look at how much does the music industry make in this country and contribute to GDP, 62% of that will be specifically live music.
Do you know how that compares to, say, mid-90s?
I don't have a number for you, but it would be...
It was way more record sales.
Oh, yeah.
CD
no,
sales,
it's massive.
Yeah.
As we all know, it's flipped on its head,
100%.
right? So this is such an exciting thing, but we're behind the eight ball. In the live music industry, we really have some catch up to do. So you said you hadn't heard of the Canadian Live Music Association. Probably neither of some of you. That's okay. We're 4.5 years into this. We have over 220 members from across the country. And we are active on things like cannabis legislation, on ticket resale legislation, on building better relationships with SOCAN and PROs. And again, helping governments like our Ministry of Tourism, Culture and Sport in the province of Ontario understand when they invest in the music industry, what the ROI is when they're working specifically with live.
How are you the same or different than, say, something like the musicians unions?
So the unions are different. Maybe it would be a better comparison if we talked about something like Music Ontario, so the music industry associations, of which there is one in every province, whether it's Manitoba Music, or Nova Scotia, Music Nova Scotia. They changed their names not that long ago too. So every province has one of those. Music Ontario, as an example, is an artist-facing organization. So they provide programs and services directed to artists, whereas we have sort of three corporate objectives or buckets that we put stuff in. So advocacy and research, and that is me and whoever I can drag with me in meetings with ministers and politicians and senior bureaucrats and the administration of governments to just help advance discussions around policy reform, or regulatory frameworks. So, maybe it's noise bylaws at a municipal level. And then we do the research to back up those arguments. So we did an economic impact assessment of the live music industry in Ontario and British Columbia. We are currently halfway through a study of live music venues in the city of Toronto, which we will then turn around and hopefully hand recommendations over to Mayor Tory and his councillors so that they can have this information when they go again to review policy and set budgets. And then we have professional development. So we have a webinar series, for example, on just for members. We just hosted one 2 days ago on how to avoid, it was about the Fire Festival and making sure you don't make those mistakes. We have
there's one easy way. Don't be that guy.
Yeah. Right. We had a great webinar on Me Too and the implications of the Me Too movement, insurance, you name it. So we provide basically training and resources to our members We have this Raising the Bar program where we're going into markets to deliver training. For example, we launched this in London just before the Junos. So naloxone training, so to actually for live music stakeholders to learn how to administer naloxone in the face of an opioid overdose, fentanyl, and bystander intervention training. So to help with clubs, venues, festivals, whatever, help assess and address difficult situations where sexual harassment may be a problem. And then event safety. So everything from active shooters to weather safety. I mean, subject to this big, scary stuff that we need to be talking about. So we're growing this program now, and we were just in London. We're going to go to Canadian Music Week, and we're going to go out to Vancouver for a 1.5-day long session, and then hopefully deploy this cross country as we build some financial momentum, also known as sponsorship, around this program. And we have some great government partners who are helping us do that as well. And then we also do things like the Canadian Live Music Industry Awards. During Canadian Music Week, we're going into our 4th year, and if any of you are watching this and you're like, how can I get involved? You can go on our website and you can self-nominate or you can nominate. We have a bunch of really cool categories. And this happens this year. It's going to be on the Friday of CMW. And I can't remember, we have about 20 categories. And we give awards, like really cool kind of award, like actual awards to our colleagues in the live music industry who are making a difference. And it is, I get to make a speech of that every year. Last year, Paul Schaefer, for 2 years, Paul Schaefer hosted it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, amazing guy. I'm not sure who our host is this year, but we'll know soon. And it's an amazing gathering of our community. And I use the word, is a capital C community on that day. It's very, very emotional for me and maybe others, because this is a competitive, territorial, entrepreneurial group of people. And they don't always hang out well. Right. They're competitors, right? But lots of them are friends. They're amazing, amazing people. But in this moment, at this award show, they get to cheer on their colleagues and peers, and it's a really great thing. So we do things like that.
Okay.
That was a really long answer.
No, it's the perfect answer. I would like to know from your perspective. You were talking about some of the programming that you have to do, and you specifically brought up the active shooter thing. Now, I don't want to go too deep into this topic, but my immediate question when you brought that up, the morning after the day of that thing in Vegas. What was that like for you?
Oh, well, it's every time there's something in the news about whether it's a bar or an outdoor event, it's it's hard because, and I've been asked this, are live music events safe? I mean, are shopping malls safe? Was taking the bus? I mean, sporting events where people gather. Everyone's vulnerable to a certain extent, as vulnerable as anyone else. But when those tragedies have happened, and there have been several since I've had this job, it's devastating. It's devastating. I mean, because
does it change how you think about your job?
Yes, it does. Actually, it makes me feel that I need to work faster, and some days that's
sorry, I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing at the idea. There's a phrase that I caught on a long time ago that talks about people dealing with tragedies, and what it is that people in tragedies just do whatever they would normally do, just more of it. And you basically just said that. Yeah. Because earlier you said, well, I probably do too much anyway, or if I'm going too fast, everyone will tell you I'm already going too fast. Yeah. But this hits you.
You can't, when that stuff happens, and it's, I really care about those people and whether they're a member or not. I mean, I know most of our members personally, and, I take my role on the board of the Ottawa Blues Fest really seriously, and I care about the community that I live in too. So I wear all kinds of hats on this one. And I'm a mom of kids who, go to shows and will go to more shows as they grow up. There's just so much work that has to be done. It's, and this is something that, I tell our members and our potential members, I mean, an association like, I know not everyone geeks out on associations. Like, I think associations are the great solution to many problems because it's united voice, right? We're all in this together. We work together. Everyone throws a bit of money in the pot and we get it done, right? And so it's sometimes hard to get people to join because they don't want to spend the money or whatever it is. But when it comes to something like this, it's like we have a responsibility as an industry to work together because on these, major issues, because when we do that, we're just going to be much more efficient and effective and faster if there's a way to stop crazy people from blowing people up or mowing them down with an AK-47, then I would like to find that way. Until that is possible, we need to know as much as we can know about those situations, about how to keep fans safe, about how to protect ourselves, about how to leverage the most innovative technology at our fingertips to make sure that we're doing everything we can. And it's too bad that we have to spend time and money worrying about that. And I guess if I had a goal that I said I didn't, it would be that going to a live music show in the future, that would be such a non-thing. And there'd be no trucks outside of Budweiser Gardens at the Junos blocking with the big cement barriers, and there'd be no, empty your pockets walking into a show. We don't live in that world anymore, unfortunately. Maybe we never did.
It's been a pleasure, Erin. Ladies and gentlemen, that'll conclude this episode of the AVB Podcast. Of course, as always, there's links below to Erin and hopefully some of her music if we can dig it up, and all of our sponsors and all of our sponsors and whatnot. You know the drill. There's some videos coming up. Click on them. Watch our stuff. See you next time.
That'll do it for this episode of the AVB Podcast. Don't forget you can subscribe to our full audio episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere you find your audio podcasts. The full episodes, highlights, and our live off-the-floor performance videos can be found at our YouTube channel, and you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram at the AVB Podcast. Of course, you'll find links to our incredible sponsors and this week's guest in the description below. The AVB Podcast is part of the Border City Network. Find more great content at bordercitynetwork.com. See you next time, folks. Bye-bye.